Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. Now we're taking a look here today at LSK. This was a big recommendation from my community, so thank you all so much for recommending that I cover this. Love to cover these as much as possible, so I really appreciate your patience too, as well with other coins. Now moving forward, I'm not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes only. You should always do your own research. And just know I have years of trading experience. My goal here is to help you trade for a lifetime. So if you stick around and watch through the video here, you will learn a thing or two. I promise you that. And more importantly, I want to teach you best practice so you're self-sufficient. If you're more so kind of an autopilot kind of person and you want some good signals, I do have a signal group of the trades that I make throughout the week, available in the link in the description below, as well as the fact that I have a Telegram community. Please check that out in your own time and learn as much as you can. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at LSK. And just before we do, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first to get a baseline of the market so we know exactly what's going on. That way we understand big picture and we can make an informed decision understanding all the variables instead of just jumping right in on a small time frame. We work our way from the one-day chart all the way down to the 15-minute chart, possibly even lower depending on the market and just seeing what's going on there. So we'll take a peek here. First of all, I use TradingView desktop application, tradingview.com. Recommend utilizing that yourself. I have a link in the description below for I believe it's a free month. If you're considering that, just kind of try it out, see if you like it. It works very well. And what I have here enabled is, well, a few things. First of all, we've got kind of a wedge pattern forming. I marked that previously for my signal group because the fact that Bitcoin is essentially working itself into this wedge pattern. So ideally, we're going to see a breakout in an upward fashion here. But again, oftentimes these can break down as well. We'll review that at another time. I'll probably just keep reviewing Bitcoin weekly to make sure we have an understanding on that as well. But for now, that's kind of the general concept of what you see with those blue lines there, support and resistance levels, kind of working themselves into a pattern here. And usually when there's a wedge pattern, it'll break out one way or the other. Okay, so we'll look at that later. For now, just note that I do have the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average, right? These purple and orange lines are essentially the moving averages. And if you look and you see, we're currently under the 50-day moving average, and the price is kind of getting rejected by that. So in other words, moving forward, we're going to see the 50-day moving average tested in the near future. So we'll see what happens there, obviously, once we get closer. But for now, it is working tentatively as a resistance. Same with the 200-day simple moving average, right? Moving on to Ethereum. What we're looking at here is pretty straightforward. We got a major resistance at 2,900 and a major support of about 1,725. It's working itself kind of into a channel. It's essentially mirroring Bitcoin, just poorly. In other words, it's just kind of like the ugly stepchild right now. It's not really doing all that much. Not quite what we want it to do, because unfortunately Ethereum, used to be a breakout. It used to break out when Ethereum would go sideways, right? It was a breakout coin. Most people would come over here and invest all their time and effort there. As we can see, the volume overall is subsiding and kind of staying kind of low right now. Now that's pretty standard for a lot of altcoins right now, but generally speaking, Ethereum should be much higher compared to what we're used to. So unfortunately, this is pretty low. Now bear in mind the price is getting rejected by the 50 as well, and the 200. So at this point in time, we still got some room for growth. There's a strong chance the price will test the 50-day moving average soon. So be on the lookout for that and see how it responds. And obviously, if it gets rejected again, it might be a consideration for a short, but more likely, I would say that long's more inevitable here, because if Bitcoin does break out and it goes just say upwards of 36,000, then we're going to see Ethereum take off to 21, 2200 and test some major resistance levels. Okay, so just be on the lookout for that. That's how Ethereum should react here moving forward. But for now, kind of standard Ethereum stuff, not much going on. Let's look at LSK here. And what we do, we look at the one-day chart first and work our way down, right? Because the one-day chart helps us understand the average true range, but also how it responds to Bitcoin sell-offs. I like to look at that to see what that kind of movement is, right? Because a lot of altcoins will respond different to Bitcoin sell-offs and spikes. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that here. So April 17th is like the first one that I always like to look at, because that was like the first major 15% loss in one single day for Bitcoin. That kind of threw the market into where we're at now. It started everything. So if we look back here, April 18th and 17th, there was a sell-off. So there's a pretty significant retracement of approximately 25%. So it went down 25% when Bitcoin went down 15%. Okay. 22nd as well, same thing here. Got another, looks very similar in size, so we're probably looking at about 20%, 25%. And then, of course, on the 25th, that's when things started to ramp up and take off, because a lot of other altcoins just went crazy at that time when Bitcoin was going sideways. That was like, oh, geez, is this altcoin season now? Because it took off, right? So everything was all well and good up until, see here, May 6th. And May 6th was a very good day for a lot of coins, so that's pretty standard. Did retrace down about 50%. And then, of course, we see May 12th. This is the first Elon candle here. So thank you very much, Elon. You screwed a lot of people out about 26% on that day. And then, of course, that kind of started the continuation. Whereas, the 19th here, of course, 18th/19th was the China candle, and we went down a good 55% on that day, right? So obviously, LSK is not immune or impervious to those things. It responds just the same, if not more. It almost seems like it's even more heightened than you would see a Bitcoin, right? As far as the selling off is concerned. So just be aware of that. Obviously, the price right now is extremely low, so it makes sense as to why we're seeing the increase right now. But just bear in mind also that the price is traveling currently. This hasn't closed yet. We've got a couple more hours in this trading cycle for this one-day chart. But simply put, we are above the 50-day moving average, and we are looking, at a point in which it might continue to stay above, right? So just keep that in mind. That'll work as a support level moving forward. RSI is pretty low, right around 55, nothing to really worry about. And we can see the MACD kind of bounce right here. Now, when it bounces above without actually coming below and then converging back, that's usually a good sign. It basically just means that the bulls are in control and that, we're looking at a pretty significant increase. Obviously, we can see that here, but that's generally how that reads. So moving on to the the 4-hour chart. We're going to look at the 4-hour chart next. And the 4-hour chart is helpful because it tells us a lot about where the support and resistance levels are at. In other words, the 4-hour chart is like the best time frame you can utilize for the 200 and the 50-day simple moving average. So looking at these two here, they are both below now, but just moments ago, I would say, well, that wasn't that moments ago. It's roughly about a day ago. So 20 hours ago, the price had shot straight through. And you'll notice a common correlation. If you look back here, when the price comes, breaks through these moving averages, you see how it shoots straight down or shoots straight up. It's a pretty common thing for that to happen. So just be aware of that. With the 4-hour chart, that's kind of what you're looking for. So that basically just means that the 50 and the 200-day moving average are currently working as support levels. RSI is not over 70, which is great, so we're in good shape there. And the MACD obviously had a convergence back here where we identified. And I'm going to go ahead and mark it just so we can kind of see the correlation between that and the cloud. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at for the 4-hour chart. Pretty standard stuff. I would say in general, LSK is looking bullish for obvious reasons, because if we look back here, RSI was well under 30, and here it bounced off of 30 recently. Okay, so it's like, nope, we're not going to go any lower on the price. We're going to stay above, and we're going to increase here today. Okay, so just keep in mind too also that Bitcoin did increase at the same exact time here yesterday, right? So it pumped pretty hard yesterday evening, at least here in the US, and that is essentially the continuation there, whereas Bitcoin sold off pretty heavily. In fact, let's look at that now. You can see right here this major increase followed by a sell-off, whereas LSK still hanging up there. It's partially because the price was so low for so long, but also because the fact that, and I forgot to identify this, the average true range is much higher than where it's at presently. In other words, before the sell-off, we can see that the price of LSK was somewhere between 380 and 650. So in this range here is roughly where the price should be. So I would not be surprised at all to see the price come up right around $3.50 to $4 in the relative near future. I think that's very likely. Again, depends on what Bitcoin does, but if Bitcoin can break upwards outside of that wedge pattern, trend itself towards the resistance of 36,500, we'll be looking in really good shape for LSK to take off. Now, however, if Bitcoin does tank and go down to 30,000 and below, it's going to be a much different story. However, this price is already very, very low, all things considered, so I don't foresee the price coming much lower than where it's at presently. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the one-day chart. Correction, let's go from the one-day chart to the 1-hour chart. And what we're looking for here on the 1-hour chart is to just quickly identify the Ichimoku Cloud and kind of see what's going on, because oftentimes, when you note a convergence on the MACD on the 4-hour chart, there's a similarity there, right? In other words, right here, I kind of marked it. This is approximately where we got a convergence on the MACD. So a lot of times, the MACD, when it converges and it crosses the 12 and under the 26, the exponential moving average within that, what it'll do is it'll commonly signal very shortly after on the cloud. In other words, you see right here where the price came above and kind of got rejected. That's where the breakout was trying to occur. It got rejected, retraced, and then came back up again. So simply put, the Ichimoku Cloud, you want to invest when the price is above the cloud. That's considered a buy signal. And when it's below, it's considered a short signal. So this would have been a good shorting opportunity, right? So that's generally how that works. So looking at this here and seeing that the convergence on the 4-hour chart essentially signaled back here that we should have bought, which would have been a good entry point, even though it got rejected up here, came back down and continued on. So that's kind of how that momentum occurs with the moving average convergence divergence. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at for the 1-hour chart. We also want to take a quick peek at TD Sequential, just kind of see if we have any sign of exhaustion here. Because when the TD Sequential kind of signals certain things, it'll tell us when there's going to be a turnaround, right? So oftentimes when you see the 1 all the way through to 9, which is the 9 triggered here, if you see that 9, as soon as you see a 9, there's a strong chance it's going to turn around. Now there's a lot more moving parts on TD Sequential. You could literally take a 3 or 4 hour course and still not fully understand and comprehend everything. Trust me on that. It's worth looking into, of course, but the common rule of thumb is you're looking for a 9. When you see a 9, if it counts up to a 9, that means it's going to reach a state of exhaustion. In other words, this is 9 hours of bullish momentum. And yes, even though these are red candles, it's still higher than the previous 4th. So that causes it to signal a 9, and that 9 tells us that we are looking at a retracement. Okay, or the inverse occurs as well. If it's too low, you'll see the price increase from there. So in other words, this 9 signals here, right there, and the price went down. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get a 9 down here, but that doesn't matter because the price is back up and reset. So hypothetically, at this point in time, we should expect to see maybe 3 hours more of bullish continuation and then a retracement. That's basically what that's telling us. Does it always happen that way? No, not at all. You want to look at everything and understand the big picture first. You don't want to only use this as a decision or a determining factor. But it does help to understand if all the other things are looking good, right? We're like in a nice bullish trend, which we have currently so far. It makes sense why we're seeing some sideways action because that was a very strong increase. In fact, how much was that? So in just 1 hour, we saw 19.25%. And then total, after just say about 5 to 7 hours, we saw about 27% increase. So that's pretty significant overall when you think of it going from like $2.20 upwards to almost $3. So honestly, there's been a lot of movement, so we have to see the price action go sideways. This is actually a good thing to see the retracement in this case because it helps us identify the fact that it's a healthy bull run, right? Only good bull runs are going to be the ones that leg up, go sideways, and continue to leg up and go sideways. You want to kind of see a staircase pattern, so to speak. So it's forming one right now, which is good. So I like this. It means that there's a good chance that if we can break above this recent high of about 291, then we'll see it probably continue on past that. So pay attention to 291. That's going to be probably the most relevant resistance level at this point. If we can break above and stay above for just say 2 or 3 hours, it's going to be probably open season to continue to push, especially if Bitcoin will break out of its wedge pattern, right? So this is all kind of contingent on Bitcoin. Of course, we've identified that, but bear that in mind when you're taking an investment here. Consider a stop loss or something, stop limit that wouldn't be, I would say maybe about 50% of the way down. Somewhere around 256 would be a good stop loss to make sure that you don't lose a lot of your gains. Okay. All right, so let's look at the 15-minute chart just to quickly identify the EMA and VWEB. Oops. Let's go ahead and close that. All right, so bottom line here with EMA and VWEB notification, this is a really good helpful tool to understand bullish and bearish momentum. Okay, so when it comes to bullish and bearish momentum, the EMA line is probably the best thing to look at because when you look at the EMA line, it helps you understand more so the fact that the price is above, it's considered bullish. When it's below, it's considered bearish. So back here, state of consolidation, it's going to be above and below pretty consistently. But hypothetically, when the price is below, like right here, that's considered bearish. When it's above, it's considered bullish. But again, state of consolidation does one of these, and it can be difficult to identify a breakout, which is why we want to utilize the MACD, right, or the Ichimoku Cloud, for example, to help us find better entry points on a larger time frame. But on the smaller time frame, 15-minute chart, utilizing these things is helpful because it helps us find a good entry point, further once you've identified, big picture that it's moving the direction you want to head. Okay, so when the price is above the EMA, basically considered obviously bullish. So in this case here, you can see the price jumped up and stayed up pretty high. Now with it ramping up so quickly, it really didn't give us any signal or indication of the fact that it was going to increase, minus that MACD indication from, I would say, 24 hours ago, right? So we really didn't have a good heads up this is going to happen unless you were to, buy up based on the MACD and or, the Ichimoku Cloud, for example. Those would be two cases in point where that would be helpful. But for right now in the 15, you really can't be like, okay, I see a good entry point. No, it happened so fast and so quick. We probably saw about 19 to 20% gain in about 15 minutes. So you really can't prepare for that. But what you could do here, hypothetically, with the price being where it's at, is you want to consider buying when the momentum is in the direction you're heading, right? So instead of trying to swim upstream, you may as well swim downstream, right? That's the concept here. So when it comes to trading and being a good trader, the key is to follow the whales or follow the bulls, whatever term you want to use, and make sure you're on the same track as they are. So if you look at this here, you see these little yellow indicators. Those are telling us that we have 30 minutes of confirmation above the EMA and the VWAP line. Now the VWAP line is a blue line here. That's the volume weighted average price. So it's taking the volume in the last 24 hours and expressing it as a price. Bear in mind, it does reset at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every single day. 1 a.m. East UK time, for example. And when it does and it resets, essentially it's going to be closer to the price. But right now we're about, 22 hours into this trading cycle, and it's showing that right now the average price based on the volume is 275, whereas the price is 283. So that's considered to be bullish because the price is over EMA and it's also above VWAP. So good consideration for entry is right here, somewhere in this range. As soon as you see these two indications, probably more so right there, that would be a case in point where you'd want to consider taking entry. So these two right here, that's a good entry point. Because again, you got verification the price is moving bullishly. You've also got indication that the price is above support, which is the VWAP line. Those are two really good things. And you also furthermore have 30 minutes of confirmation knowing that the price is still trending in the direction you want to head. And you're not chasing the bottom and trying to find the bottom. Me, I'd much rather jump in the middle and exit the middle than try to jump in the bottom and exit the top. The reason why is because it's difficult to find the bottom, and when things are overextended, oftentimes it can be difficult to find the top too. So, find healthy, comfortable ways of finding small gains, and that's the important thing to do. That's what I like to look for. So either way, that's what I wanted to show you here today, of course. So, big picture, my prediction is that LSK will increase. It will definitely do some pretty good things here in the near future. Again, we identified the fact that the average true range is somewhere between $3.50 and I would say roughly $7. So with it being at 282, I think we're in pretty good position considering the fact that it did and is potentially breaking above the 50-day moving average on the one-day chart. So those are all good things, and we're above the both the 4-hour chart moving average as well. So there's a lot of good indications of a buy signal here for LSK. So I hope it continues to take off, and we'll see what happens. Just bear in mind the important thing is to identify how it responds to this price action. If it gets rejected at 291 with a current resistance level, then we know that that's going to be potential resistance moving forward. But if it breaks above and holds above for just say, again, 2 to 4 hours, then we're going to be looking in pretty darn good shape to have that be a new support level and for it to continue to take off. Again, just pay attention to how Bitcoin's performing. If Bitcoin goes sideways much longer, then we'll see LSK kind of stay sideways as well. But if Bitcoin can jump up above 32,000, 33,000, and then on to 36, LSK will take off. And you will likely probably double your profit depending on how Bitcoin performs. All right. So if you found benefit from this, please consider liking and subscribing. Feel free to reference my Signal group as well, available through my Patreon account. And more importantly, check out my Telegram community too. We got a good group of folks, 500 plus members already, and it's growing quite quickly. And everyone just has really good constructive questions, and it's a fun environment. So feel free to reference that in your own time. You can learn a lot about crypto by just checking in every once in a while. You can also message me as well if you'd like, if you have any specific questions. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Really appreciate your time. Have a good one. Thank you.